Welcome into Locked On Phillies. The Phils have made a move, and we preview the trade deadline. All the moves that could possibly be made here on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. I've been talking Phillies baseball for years over on 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio. And I'm happy to be here with you as your host of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And today is the big trade deadline preview show. What have the Phillies done? Because they've already made a move. What are the Phillies going to do? Who's available? And who are some of the top prospects pitching-wise and position player-wise that the Phillies should have their eye on? We'll get into all of it. We're going to start with what's already happened, though. So some news earlier today. The Phillies have made a trade. They've traded JoJo Romero, who you remember, a reliever who got some time at the major league level over the past couple seasons. JoJo Romero goes to St. Louis, and Edmundo Sosa comes back from the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, who is Edmundo Sosa? Well, he has 122 at-bats, and he's batting 189 so far in 2022. Not anything all that crazy going on there. He's a younger player, a newer player to the major league level. He's only, he was 22 when he debuted. He's only 26 now. So on his fourth season in Major League Baseball, all with the St. Louis Cardinals, and the first two with very minimal appearances. He had 3 plate appearances in 2018, 10 plate appearances in 2019. So nothing special going on there with his appearances. And then in 2021, he played in 113 games. For the Redbirds, he's played in 53 games so far with St. Louis. So one of those rotational infield guys. He's not a terrible bat. He's not a guy that is completely not worth being a major league hitter, but he's also not a guy who's going to be an everyday starter. So why did the Phillies make this move? Well, first off, JoJo Romero was a guy that didn't really seem to have any favor in the organization anymore. He was a guy that got some opportunities in 2020 and 2021 and just never really progressed into a major league bullpen arm that the Phillies thought he could be. So a guy you're probably not going to use at any point, shipped out for a guy that maybe you will use. But how does Edmundo Sosa fit in? Right now, your infielders available are Johan Camargo, Jairo Munoz, Bryson Stott, Didi Gregorius, when we're talking about non-first baseman, non-catcher, non-pitcher. You look at those guys and you think, oh, okay, those are 4 pretty solid guys. Jairo Munoz, Johan Camargo, Didi Gregorius, Bryson Stott, Alec Bohm as well. We've got to count Alec Bohm. But those are 5 guys that you feel pretty comfortable with, all of them. And you didn't move one of them to bring in Edmundo Sosa. So now you have Sosa, who doesn't really hit as well as any of those guys, or hit significantly better than any of those guys. Probably fields it better than all of them. A very outstanding fielder. But you're getting Jean Segura back in what should be less than a week. It could be in like the next 4 or 5 days here. Jean Segura is making his return to the Philadelphia Phillies lineup. And then you have 6 either second, short, or third baseman players on this roster. It's weird. It kind of says setup move, thinking that, one of those guys is going to be moved for a better player. It could be Johan Camargo, who's been a nice utility piece, who may not totally fit in down the stretch when Jean Segura is back. Could be Jairo Munoz as part of a deal. It could be Didi Gregorius, since the team doesn't plan on re-signing him after this season. He will be gone from this team. Get something for nothing if you move on from him now. And I didn't think Didi would be on the move at the trade deadline because I thought Jean Segura was further away from coming back. But with Segura potentially back as early as Tuesday, you could be looking at a Didi Gregorius move. So this is a setup move, it feels to me, by Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies front office, getting a guy that allows them to now move one of or 2 of the other infielders that you have at the major league level to make something happen. So it's a setup move there. But that's the only thing the Phillies have done. The trade deadline, August 2nd, and we're rapidly approaching it. But still, it's time to preview everything. And we're going to start, since we've covered the singular move that the Phillies already made, we're going to start with the players that could potentially be moved from the Philadelphia Phillies roster at this trade deadline and some minor league guys. Now, I'll tell you what I'll expect starting with the minor league guys. Andrew Painter, not going to be moved. Mick Abel, not going to be moved. Logan O'Hoppe, not going to be moved. Griff McGarry, not going to be moved. The 4 guys that have been on the top 100 prospects list for MLB, they're not going anywhere, I don't think. And Dave Dombrowski kind of said they're not going to sell the farm, mortgage the farm, whatever you want to call it, whatever expression you want to use, in order to improve at this deadline, because I think it's prudent. I think they're still a year or 2 away from being true competitors to win a championship. But those are the 4 guys I would expect to still be here. So who could get moved? Johan Rojas has been really, really good in Double-A this year. He's a top 5 prospect in the system. He's very talented, but a younger guy, no guarantee he's going to work out. He could be moved. Hans Kraus, who came over as part of the Spencer Howard deal from Texas last year, he could potentially be moved. Ethan Wilson, a high A-ball guy, an outfielder. He could be moved. Luis Garcia, Francisco Morales, who's struggled at Double-A, a guy that many see as a major league relief pitcher one day. There's a bunch of other guys down there. Eric Miller, Jalen Ortiz, Jordan Vyers. Like, these guys could all potentially be shipped out by the Philadelphia Phillies. But I'd expect those top 4 prospects, the 4 highest rated prospects by the folks who put out the top 100 prospects list, I'd imagine they'll all still be here. Now, at the major league level, some players that have the potential to be moved. Didi Gregorius, certainly. We already talked about why. Expiring contract, get something for nothing. Jairo Munoz, Johan Camargo. There's now a bit of a logjam at the middle infield positions. Those are the odd men out, it does seem, as far as guys who've played the least this year. I'd imagine that they're both available if they need to be included to make something happen. I don't know what they fit in for, but I can't imagine that the Phillies would have trouble parting with either of those players. Looking at the outfield, if there's a play for a center fielder that you could get that's a younger player, maybe one that's under team control for a little bit longer, like a Michael A. Taylor out there in Kansas City, well, you could see Matt Vierling potentially on the move. You could see Mickey Moniak or Nick Maton, who I didn't list on the prospects list because they spent some time at the major league level, but those are guys that are in AAA right now that could potentially be moved to bring in somebody if the Phillies are willing to give up on Mickey Moniak, who was a number 1 overall pick and still has some interest around baseball. Nick Maton, who's a guy who's played a little bit at the major league level, is also caught behind that logjam in the middle infield positions. Those guys could move. Other guys on the major league roster to keep an eye on. I don't think these guys move, but there's been some rumors about it. Odubel Herrera, now the center field spot, it doesn't seem set enough that you can move Odubel unless you're getting a guy back that you're very sure about. But Odubel Herrera could potentially be moved. He is on a 1-year deal. You could look at guys in the pen. Juris Familia, if anyone wants him, could potentially be moved. There's some other guys that haven't been getting as much run lately, but could potentially go to a team as part of the sell-off. And Andrew Bellotti, maybe. Nick Nelson has been nice for the team this year. I'd hate to see them move him, but he could potentially be a part of it. These are all the guys to look at that you could be hearing their names in a return for a trade. I don't know what the Phillies are going to do yet. I'm still trying to figure out their plan because the first move, honestly, a little bit of a head scratcher with the Edmundo Sosa trade for a guy who is really slashing this year. Let's just go down to his stats for standard batting. He's slashing 189, 244, 270. That's not the numbers you want to see for the trade deadline acquisition of a team trying to make the playoffs. What does Dave Dombrowski have up his sleeve? Well, I bet you it's something. And coming up, we're going to start by talking about some pitchers that could be targeted to wear the red pinstripes following this trade deadline. That coming up next on Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about our friends over at Blue Nile. Maybe you're ready to pop the question, or maybe you're just celebrating a milestone moment. Either way, you can find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile's got very simple online tools. They let you choose the diamond shape, size, clarity, setting style, everything you need to make that diamond ring one of a kind and unique to her, it'll be the perfect engagement ring. Maybe you're looking for fine jewelry, but you're not ready to pop the question. You're looking for like bracelets or earrings, a necklace, something like that, and you don't know exactly what you want to get, or you got to find something that fits in your budget. Well, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. They're available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale. You can save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, let's start with the pitchers that the Philadelphia Phillies could potentially acquire at the trade deadline. And the first one we're starting with is a team that the Phillies see coming up for the first time this year, the Cincinnati Reds. Now, the Reds have been an absolute dumpster fire, and they have a couple attractive pieces to sell off. The top one was Luis Castillo, who was an all-star for the National League this year, but Castillo was already traded to the Mariners for a huge package that include, I think, 3 of their top 5 prospects. It was a wild trade package for Luis Castillo, and now the Mariners have a bona fide playoff rotation out there. That's a good move by them. But you're also looking at Tyler Mahle, who's available. And now, Mahle hasn't exactly had a banner year in 2022, but who in Cincinnati really has, right? The Reds are floundering. It's expected that they're going to have more of a fire sale than they're already having by the time the trade deadline comes around. And Mahle, who's only 27 and still has a cheap team control deal for next season, he's going to be available. So the rough start to the season he's got a 4.48 ERA because of it, but he's got a 3.51 ERA in his last 11 starts. So it could be an opportunity for the Phillies to get a bargain deal on a pitcher who's currently playing below his watermark. It could slot into the middle or the back end of the Phillies rotation. So something to keep a look on there with Cincinnati. A familiar name comes up next year who I've been looking at, and the Phillies just saw to start the second half. I know. When I say David Robertson, Phillies fans recoil because of his stay here in Philadelphia recently, where he had injury issues and never really even played for the Phillies. But hey, why not bring him back and give him a chance to actually earn the money that he took last time? Now, he's 37 years old, but he's having a resurgent season up in Chicago for the Cubs. In 35 appearances so far this year, he's posted a 1.83 ERA. He's got 14 saves as well, so he's still got those big innings in him, the high leverage innings. And he's got a bevy of postseason experience from his time in New York. So if you're looking for somebody on a playoff push or to help you win a playoff series even, David Robertson's available. He's on an expiring contract, so there's very little risk involved. And the Cubs are a team that's looking to sell off. So that would be a guy that the Phillies could go get to try and upgrade the back end of the bullpen. Even though the bullpen's been good, one more high leverage arm doesn't seem like the worst idea. So then maybe just familiar guys guys who are struggling, we'll just say that, don't have to throw innings for this team anymore. Now, there are other high-end starters that the Phillies could look at, one being Martin Perez of the Texas Rangers, who the Phillies have seen firsthand exactly how good he's been so far this year for the Rangers. He's got himself in the AL Cy Young conversation. He's set up to command a lot of interest as the trade deadline draws even nearer, and he's going to be one of the more popular targets on the mound, which means he'll cost more than most options available. But if the Phillies want to spend for a top-end guy, and of course Luis Castillo now off the market, if they want to go all in, Perez could be that guy. He's got a 2.59 ERA in 118 innings, and Texas could look to keep him, but if they do sell, well, the Phils should absolutely at least give him a call to see what it would take. Another player from Texas that's interesting is Matt Moore, left-handed reliever. Moore is another former Philly that's going on to have a banner year with his next team after leaving in Philadelphia. So if you remember, Moore had a 6.29 ERA last year with the Phillies, and all he's done that season is dropped that to a 1.61. He's been one of the better arms in the Rangers' pen, has a cheap expiring contract, and he's not the pitcher we saw last year coming out of the pen for the Phillies. He could be a nice addition, a lefty reliever, so that Jose Alvarado isn't the only lefty you feel comfortable with in high leverage spots. Could be a guy that the Philadelphia Phillies and Dave Dombrowski take a peek at. Another starter, if the Phillies are still looking at a back-end starter, could be Chad Kuhl. If the Phillies are looking for a fifth starter to cover for Zach Eflin's injury issues, Chad Kuhl could possibly be that guy. He's not a top-end arm. His 4.48 ERA is respectable, but not anything that's going to get him a 1, 2, 3, maybe in a 4 spot in a rotation. But Kuhl could be a nice guy that you trust to be your every fifth-day starter. And he shouldn't be that hard to pry away. Shouldn't take that much to get him in red pinstripes. The Rockies are never good, even though they don't really sell all that often. He's 29 years old. He's on an expiring contract, and you could look at the Philadelphia Phillies to try and steal the last part of this year away from a team in Colorado that, frankly, isn't using him for anything because they're not competing for anything. So Chad Kuhl, another name to keep an eye on. And one more I just want to mention from the Chicago Cubs as well is Michael Givens. Now, Givens is one of the more consistent relievers in baseball. He's just one of those veteran relievers that you can ink into a setup role in the bullpen and expect results. Now, the Cubs haven't been good this year, but it's not Givens' fault. He has a 2.87 ERA in 37 2/3 innings. And he spent time in his career with Baltimore, Colorado, Cincinnati, and Chicago. It's not like he's really been with good teams. So because of those teams' low profile, well, he's one of the hidden gems of late relievers. If you're not familiar with Michael Givens' work, it's because he's not often throwing for teams that are competitive, but he himself has been very good throughout his career as a major league reliever. If the Phillies want another righty to bring in that you trust in high leverage situations, could be a low risk, high reward trade if the Phillies go ahead and add Michael Givens. So those are the pitchers that the Philadelphia Phillies could potentially target that I have. Of course, there's a bunch out there, but those are some of the ones that make the most sense to me. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you about some position players that could fit into the Phillies' deadline plans. But first, though, I want to tell you about Built Bar. If you haven't heard about Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. All right, you ready? It's delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. The cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They're only 160 calories, 15 grams of protein in them, so they're great for you. So run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It'll be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them all for yourself. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. And the best, we'll cut you a good offer. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and you can get 15% off of your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, I just told you about some pitchers the Phillies could be looking at, but let's take a peek now at some position players that could be targeted at the deadline for the Philadelphia Phillies. The first one is an NL East opponent has one of these players, well, has multiple of these players, a big name slugger for the Washington Nationals. No, not Juan Soto. Josh Bell is still available, and with all the focus on Juan Soto, perhaps there's a better option for the Phillies. Now, Josh Bell still boasts plus power from both sides of the plate, and he's batting .302 this season on a team that doesn't give him much lineup protection, meaning, yeah, this guy is still a true hitter. The real issue with Bell is that it wouldn't really be clear where he slots in position-wise to the Phillies roster. Rhys Hoskins had been struggling in the field recently, so maybe it's possible that a first base upgrade could be in the cards if Dombrowski wants to make like a splashy move, but it's not really a need. But Josh Bell is talented enough, a hitter, that he's worth a phone call about, just someone to kind of feel around there in Washington, because when all the focus is on Soto, maybe they'll lose track of Josh Bell and get you a little bit of an undervalue deal. Another one to look for. We've talked about Cincinnati already with Tyler Mahle potentially being a guy coming to Philadelphia. Well, Brandon Drury is another one. Brandon Drury has really become a trade deadline target in 2022. Can you believe it? It's an absolute remarkable turn of events for the utility player that signed a minor league deal with Cincinnati this offseason. But it's reality because Drury has defensive versatility. He's batting .274. He's got 19 home runs, which is already a career best, and we still have 60-some games to go. Maybe a little bit under 60 now. But, yeah, a lot of games left. And Drury would not be a lock to be an everyday player in Philly, but he's a better option than both Johan Camargo and Jairo Munoz. Now, Edmundo Sosa, who the Phillies brought in, he's a guy that, he doesn't really slot in above those guys. Brandon Drury absolutely would be a guy that slots in above. So Maybe the infield rotating door continues with Dombrowski looking at Drury as an option, or maybe it could be a bench bat that you trust in certain spots. It's a guy to keep an eye on because he would add a right-handed bat to the bench, which gives manager Rob Thompson a little more flexibility. So, yeah, Drury's a smaller move that could pay bigger dividends for a contender like the Phillies in the future. Whit Merrifield's another guy to keep an eye on who's out there with the Kansas City Royals. Andrew Benintendi has already moved to the New York Yankees, so now Merrifield becomes one of the focuses for folks calling the Royals. He's the less attractive option when compared to Benintendi, but you're still looking at a guy that could fill an outfield need for the Phillies. He's a 33-year-old veteran still under contract in 2023 with an option for 24. So it's not ideal for a player of his age, but that also means the price tag shouldn't be too demanding. So if the Phillies want a cheap option to improve the center field position while not having to part with any of their top prospects or players, Whit Merrifield could potentially fit into that mold. Another Kansas City Royals outfielder is Michael A. Taylor to keep an eye on. So Taylor's a guy that's going to give you Gold Glove level defense out in center field, and it's certainly a need. He's also batting .276 this year, only 6 homers, but that .276 is a respectable average, especially in today's MLB. Both of those marks are better than what Whit Merrifield has posted so far this year, and Taylor also has another year on his contract, but he's significantly younger than Merrifield. So it would fill a need at center field next season too, and it'd be nice to have some continuity at that position for once. Of all the players we've gone through so far, I might like the Taylor fit the most as far as it goes for the Phillies. Another guy who the Phillies are seeing right now is Brian Reynolds. Now, it doesn't sound like Pittsburgh wants to move Reynolds, but hey, there's a lot of players that get traded that the organization says they don't want to trade. Reynolds is bagged .257 with 15 homers. He's playing a really solid outfield. He was an all-star last year. He's only 27, and he signed through 2023. It would be great, and you can see why the Pittsburgh Pirates want to keep him in Pittsburgh because he's a super talented player that plays defense, swings the bat well, fits well, and a young up-and-coming outfielder that should be an all-star contender for years to come. Now, the market may be a little too competitive, or it could just be that Pittsburgh asking price is a little bit too high. But hey, Reynolds would be an excellent addition to the team, and you're out there in Pittsburgh already. Why not have a meeting, talk about him a little bit, and see if maybe you could steal a star outfielder away. Finally, well, Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto are both still available. And hey, you never know. Maybe the Phillies try to make a splash all-in move for them. I wouldn't hold my breath and expect it. But hey, Dave Dombrowski, make the call, see what happens, because it never hurts to pick up the phone and check. Well, that's the trade deadline preview. We'll see if any of those guys end up in red pinstripes. One move already made with the Edmundo Sosa for JoJo Romero trade with the Cardinals. But hey, stay locked in and we'll have your latest updates on Phillies trade moves as we draw even closer to the deadline. That's all I've got for you today for Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, make sure you call him Sully. He's got humor. He's got stories. He covers baseball like no one else does. And he's got all the news and storylines from around Major League Baseball. And Locked On MLB is available wherever you get your podcasts. So check out Sully's work over there. And thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will talk to you tomorrow on the next edition of Locked On Phillies.